Ho, 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 ho. All right. So, like I said, I should have done the stream yesterday, but time and situations didn't allow it, so I'm doing the stream today. So what I was thinking is, as we are waiting most likely for people to drop in, or I'm contemplating, I mean, even though the stream is not going to be very long today, because I'm quite drained of energy. So we'll see how long I can muster to stream and be social. Come on, let's switch off the sound. Atski? Was that Atski? Yes, Atski and Irish Nonsense. Hi. Hi. So, should I do one 30-minute sketch while we wait for people, or draw 30 minutes on this guy? That's the question. As I'm quite low in energy, I'm not going to be very probably produce any good concept art. Maybe I can just paint whatever for 30 minutes, and then I'll then do paintovers. Continue on that guy. Oh, hey, Gila. You're on the stream. All right, I could continue on this guy. I mean, at the moment with slightly lowered. Oh no. Driver is dead. So, time to restart the driver. For those who have that problem, sometimes when the Wacom driver dies, all you need to do is, in my instance, switch off the Cintiq, kill Photoshop, and it will work again. See? Yes! It's working. It's working. Oh, switch off the sound. Why did that sound start? Hey, Matthias, Georg. Apple juice. Yeah, so that's a good trick to get it to work again. Is to just go to services and switch and find a Wacom driver and restart the Wacom driver, and then you don't need to restart your whole computer, because on for some people that problem occurs where they in order to get the drivers back, they need to switch everything off and restart. But with this, you can just go and find a service Wacom driver, and just right click and restart the driver, and you just can't have Photoshop start or the driver being used in that sense. So this concept, I don't have that many days left. I think I have a week left, and unfortunately I'm extra busy this coming week. So I'm thinking maybe yet again, like a last ArtStation challenge, I won't be able to find the time to finish them all. I mean, I could like lessen the quality of the concepts. But I don't think that is something I want to do. Hey, Kilrathi. How's it going? It's not a good morning, though. It's good night or good evening. There's been a lot of interest in people wanting to model my concepts. So in a way, like like what I did last year was I just withdrew my submission. Well, first of all, because I didn't finish it. So it felt like I don't want to be judged on in a competition on work that is not competition worthy. I'm good, thanks, Ekirati. I'm a bit tired. It's been a lot of energy wasted. So it's just on the lower end, of the battery. But all in all, it's okay. It's all good. It's some days are trickier than others. So that's why also I prefixed the stream with that it won't be a long one today. I'm not sure how how active I can be. I feel like just in theory just go on YouTube and disappear. Just look at stupid things on YouTube and then realize it's late and then go to bed. But first, I will do the paintovers. It's not that many paintovers this time around. Hey, Kolsga, welcome. That name I don't recognize, so you must be new-ish, or you have de-lurked and now present yourself in your final form. Let's switch off topic. Doesn't need to be there. So killing the underlay, I think there's stuff I don't like in the drawing. Like this is very annoying. It doesn't need to be there because it makes it look like he has like chicken wings. Oh, that reads better. Oh, that's cool, Koska. That's good. Usually this is not the normal. This is my usual stream is every day at 9:10 in the morning in UK time. So this is a 2-week challenge extra stream where I'm gonna do paintovers over the community's submissions to this 2-week challenge. It's a 2-week long art challenge where you get a topic and you draw something on the topic. So this now 2 weeks is up and I'm gonna be giving you guys my opinion on what you've done. Obviously it's not the single utmost truth because it's just my opinion, but I have been doing this for so many years that it's a pretty decent opinion, but nonetheless it doesn't mean it's the truth. You know, who has the truth of what is art? Art is so subjective, you know. Anyways, so that will happen on this stream. And as I'm quite tired today, I don't think the stream is going to be very long. Usually, the stream is around, these extra streams are around 2, 3, 4 hours. But yeah, not today. That's cool, Kilrathi. It's fine. There wasn't a lot of entries at all, this 2 week challenge. In to some degree, I can I understand that it's summer. A lot of people are doing stuff. You know, school is out for the summer. Usually during the summer, the everyday business is interrupted with you know summer activities. Kolska, there is a underneath the stream, the window is a YouTube archive to the usual streams, which is what usually happens. Is that at the beginning of the stream I ask for a random topic, 6 topics, and I roll a digital dice, and the dice decides which one of the 6 topics I'll draw, and I'll start a timer. That's why this particular stream is called 30-minute warm-up, because every morning what has happened is that I get a random topic and I draw whatever enters my mind as a kind of like doing push-ups or sit-ups, but the art equivalent of it. Yeah, and I archive it. But lately I have entered an art competition where the subject is beyond human, and it's an open-ended format of how you want to interpret beyond human. So my interpretation of beyond human is that the humankind are parasites. They are the last stand. So this is the human boss. He's the only human that has flesh left. All the other humans are quite robotic. So he is 50-50 human, 50 the other 50 robotic. Oh, really, Koska? That's pretty cool. So YouTube works then, in that degree that people can randomly find me, which is fun, which is cool, which is great. That means it works. So that the whole thing about YouTube and so on, I've noticed that in this art station challenge, when I'm doing a little bit more actual concept art rather than these random topic sketches, these get a lot more traffic or views on YouTube, which is interesting. Especially a few, all these kind of mechanical humans, they're getting a lot of traffic. Hey, Sayart. Oh, thank you very much, Koska. There you see, the villains are, everyone loves the villains, right? Fun to see, and interesting to hear that the YouTube hits reflects correctly of most people's opinions. And the one that has gotten most traffic is the centipede one. That one has gotten the absolute most traffic. Hey, Sarah, thank you. Let me open the centipede one. This one everyone has enjoyed a lot. And so many people have asked if it's 3D base. Obviously it's not. It's just drawn with patience. Well, thank you, Irish. So this is the boss of those. But like I said, today I'm quite tired, so I'm gonna be doing the paintovers in 14 minutes, and after the paintovers, I'm gonna call it a day. So it's gonna be a rather short extra stream, but nonetheless, I'm excited. It's gonna be fun to look at the 2-week challenge stuff you guys have done, and ideally the feedback will at least open your eyes to a potential different take on the subject, and the potential mistakes you've done, and you can correct it, or do whatever you want with the feedback. But what I've always enjoyed with feedback is that what you always got to remember when someone points something out, that's usually a matter of taste. But a lot of cases also there's technical mistakes that maybe the person is not at a level where they understand the mistake they've been doing, even though they've been trying to search for the mistake. Right? It's a very common thing of not seeing the forest for all the trees, because you're occupied with your other flaws as an artist, that you don't see the ones beyond your horizon, because you're focusing on the flaws that you can pick up at your current skill level. Say art. Monster that's shooting sea stars? What? Oh, no, he's not shooting sea stars. They are drones. So it's cameras. What funny that you're saying is sea stars. It could be sea stars. Yeah, so this is he has his back and chest full of drones that fly and observe. What's so funny is that sea stars, and I had to think, like, what? Sea stars? I haven't drawn sea stars, especially not uh, the shooting kind. But that's a good one. Thanks for that. Now I have to reconsider. Is it going to be known as the sea star boss? But that'd be interesting thing. This little universe I created about the heroes and the villains, right? The bad guys and the good guys, and what they look like, and the suggested behavior and so on. I've gotten a lot, not a lot, but quite a few questions and requests for collaborations to take this project, or the creatures and evil characters. Like, when is the comic out? When is the Do you need a writer for this world? You should make it into a comic, etc., etc. Quite a few people instantly started to ask about, like what it is, when will it be released, have I considered, you know. So in that sense, it's a great what's it called, interest in the universe that I created, and also it shows that the concept art works, right? people are being able to see beyond what I've already created and can see the relationship between the concepts. They can understand the actions, they can understand the dynamics and the interest being generated by those dynamics. Now, obviously, I'm hyping it a bit, you know, like I'm some sort of wizard, but I mean, if I didn't succeed in doing those kind of interactions between the concepts and people filling in the gaps with their own narrative and being interested in it, I wouldn't be getting those requests. So, oh no, I can't have that. That looks bad. It is a sign that I have created something that people can relate to. And that is something I've been talking about on the streams. When I'm designing the characters, that they need to be relatable. They need to be using archetypes that you can understand and use, and don't need to question as you're observing them. I mean, I could have designed completely different things, but it would have been sitting in a space that maybe people wouldn't relate to. All right. Oh, tasty apple juice. Okay, let's do the challenge. Paintovers. It wasn't that many this time around, and yeah, I think these are all. Let me double check so that we know. I know Zealand did some other ones. I have this all. Okay, so number one talent, he or she submitted 2 drawings. This is the latest one that he or she decided to go again. So the biggest thing, or the first thing I thought about, is obviously the interaction between these two, right? That's the narrative. And the second thing I thought about was scale, because obviously the creature is large, the hero is small. Let me just read the 2-week challenge, right? I'll show it. I can show it even. Come on. The 2-week challenge is, for this one, boss mode. Make the hero and the villain of your worst best dream. Focus on production art, so limited to less of an illustration, or go the other direction. Do a full illustration of it. Don't cross the stream. Oh, Ghostbusters reference. Ouch. Yeah, so the idea is to make a boss character, good or a bad, or good and bad. As usual, it's up for interpretation. Hello, Quetzal, 12. Where's Quetzal 11 to 1? Anyway, so seeing this one, it's obvious that number one talent wanted to show scale and the vastness of this. They're all dead. Quetzal, that's good. Anyway, so my first interpretation would be: is this the best solution to show scale and this creature coming around the corner, and who's watching this? Right. So doing this, right? Who's watching this picture? Where are we? And what tools are being used to engage us in this scenario, right? So if we think about, are we supposed to be engaged? So we're looking at it from high above, we're not placed in the situation. We're looking down at this massive beast looking at a person. So by a simple little addition, right? We let's say we place a character here standing and in the foreground, like leaning on the wall, looking down at the event, right? That's more or less where we are at. We are not a part of that story. We are far away from that story, observing this massive scale difference and engagement, and we have to be somehow connected with it, right? Another way to think about this situation is, or would be, like let's say I'm gonna just quickly sketch it up, and then move it around, because due to the fact that I'm rapidly sketching up or redrawing, I'm gonna have to reconsider the composition as I'm going along. So I'm gonna make mistakes because it's quicker and faster. So bear with me, right? It's gonna be a lot of questioning on my end. So let's say we have this creature, right? We have the hero coming and watching. And what if the creature is coming around the corner, being hit by the light from the torch? And what did that creature look like? Something like that. So it comes around, sees the hero, right? And we can have the hand kind of overlapping the light and being hit by the light. So it becomes a completely different narrative, right? Now we are on the hero's end of the narrative, right? We're down on ground level. We're seeing the creature breaching our field of view, coming into our field of view, and we get the scale. Can increase the third point perspective, and we understand it completely differently. So now we are on the hero side. We are engaging in the holy shit aspect of the bad guy coming into frame, right? So in a lot of different ways we can play with that factor, and play around with composition, right? So that, for instance, in this case, we are looking up at the creature. We are one in that sense. And another solution could be, a vertical line. We see the hero looking for something, like he's walking around, right? Walking towards us, not seeing the bad guy. So we are looking up at the hero. He's walking on the ground. The ground is flat down there. Why is it doing? Oh, because it's underneath. Smart guy. So we have the thing there, and then we can have the beast coming around the corner, right? Grabbing and kind of preying on the hero. And we can have some fog coming in not fog, but smoke or whatever, some mood, right? Up the mood. And in that way, you can have a completely different narrative as well. Game over, man. Yeah, that's how they say in Aliens. What's his name? He died, the actor. Anyway, so my point being, there's many different ways of showing scale. Hudson, I think, yeah. Showing interaction, and saying and choosing this way of presenting the interaction between the characters. As a viewer, we feel very removed from the interaction. So, like I said in the topic, either do production art or illustration. Production art is very zoomed out and descriptive and clear and defined, while illustration, you can have things hidden, you can have mood, you can have lost edges, you can have just a glimmer of light. Production art, you can't hide things in shadow. You need to show everything. So what I think the biggest flaw here is the choice of describing the scene is very zoomed out and anonymous for the viewer. That's my feedback. That's the biggest problem. I mean, then I could talk about the design of the creature and the weird anatomy of the character, but that's secondary when it comes to engagement. I think the interaction is the biggest issue here, rather than the finer details of anatomy or fudgy lines and whatever. So this is Mean Machine Rex. It's a interesting interpretation of the topic. Killer dogs, I guess. Let me see if oh, come on, if Mean Machine has written anything about the post. Actually, no. Mean Machine hasn't posted anything in text-wise. Hey, Novio, welcome. Anyway, so let's look at this as is. I think the biggest problem for me is that it's all very, very, very black. Like there's no range here really. It's either very bright or very dark. So the first thing I would do is decide on lighting conditions in the sense of temperature. A lot of problems I see here is that it's all very black and white, almost. Very little color that helps the eye understand the interaction between the shapes. Novio, yeah, there's going to be a new 2-week challenge after this stream. I'm going to post it on Discord. Yeah, so the biggest problem here is that the like I said, the value range is so sharp. Like there's no scope at all. It's either very, very dark or very, very bright. And it becomes quite hard to understand beyond the initial read, right? So that if we look at the initial read, we get it. It's angry dogs, kind of. I hope it's dogs. And the problem with trying to save anything like that is is that you have to go back in and repaint huge sections, right? So, I mean, whoa, I shortcutted to another channel. The problem is that with trying to save work is that you're basing it on the foundation that they've already created, right? You can't. If I would paint this from scratch, I wouldn't paint it the same way, right? I would paint it completely differently. And in that way, the whole setup of the painting would be it would be done in a different way. And I think what Mean Machine Rex did as a mistake, I can show you, because Mean Machine posted it earlier, an earlier version. And the earlier version, oh, come on, was this. And it's very obvious the approach where it's just dark and then there's light. There's like nothing in between. And what that does is it creates a good rhythm. Like we can understand the rhythm of where it's light, where it's dark. But beyond that, it becomes very, very hard to interact with that drawing. Like Mean Machine Rex painting works really well like this, zoomed out, far, far, far out. But that's the only way it has a strength, right? It has this initial read because the contrast is so high. The shape rhythm of the shapes, the rhythm of the read is only working at this level. But then when we look closer in, this high contrast aspect, well, it doesn't work. So one thing that when you do work and set up the base for a painting, where you want to show these angry dogs or lions, I don't know what creatures they are. They look like dogs or some sort of monsters. Anyway, so what you got to do is the whole idea of zooming out and zooming in is that as you're painting, you need to have both the read that Mean Machine Rex have established well, as well as maintaining the value range and composition zoomed out, so that both aspects work, right? So that when we zoom out, we can read the image, and when we zoom in, there is information to give the viewer interest, but you can't like level out the value range. You can't level out the light. You can't give everything equal treatment zoomed in, because then when you zoom out, it's just gonna be gray mush, right? So it's like a locally controlled value range in a way, so that you can maintain the readability here, but then also have enough width to paint something zoomed in at this level, so that when we do zoom in, we do look at little details. We do look at the fur, you know, how is it folding or flowing? How is it placed? What's the interaction between the shadow and the light and the shininess of the fur, etc., etc. All these are secondary read information. Primary read is again this zoomed out version. So that's something very, very important to try to maintain, and that's something I think Mean Machine didn't really succeed in with this very high contrast painting. That would be the biggest thing I would start with from the beginning. Like I said, if you go back and trying to correct it from this stage, you're working on something that's fundamentally, or from the foundation rather, flawed. Much of the reasons what I talked about is that, like, what's the rhythm that you're gonna be reading the image, and the fidelity of it, right? So that where's the details, where's the hard edges, where's the soft edges, and those things are easily obtained when you're doing it consciously from the beginning, rather than trying to save a painting. So let's do the next one, and that's say art. I think it's cool. It's quite otherworldly. You become engaged in the painting. One thing with the guy running though, which I find confusing. If we mask his upper body, oh, thank you. If we mask his lower body and only look at the top, he's quite rigid and straightened up. And if we show the lower body, the lower body is in motion. So that becomes an issue. No one runs so straight in the back. What I would probably do is switch it up a bit to focus on motion, and running with an arm up like that is quite awkward. So what you probably, my cat wants to come in. That's funny. Came and clawed at the door. Meow meow. Yeah, so you gotta think about motion more. You know, how is the motion, and what's the character? You know, so you really need to try to indicate personality and motion. You know, like one way, like this, straight, like a straight back, right? He's running with a gun. What with a straight back? So is he like English? And if he's running like a gentleman, right, he wouldn't be swaying that much. He would probably be have shorter steps and be positioned differently. But if he's like really pushing and having full motions, his back wouldn't be that straight. So that's something you gotta try to layer into your poses, is what kind of character is it, right? What's the personality? What's the motion that you want to depict? Who is he, and what does he do, or who is she, and what does she do? And so when you're defining the motion, then you also got to think about what parts of the body is receiving the light. I can see a lot of fundamental volumetric rendering decisions that you're making in order to show it correctly in light, but it's not correct in pose, especially if he's running right. But then there's also another problem with this pose, is the fact that we're running with the opposite shoulder to leg, right? I don't remember the name for it, but there's a specific name for it, where, you know, if you have your left leg forward, your right shoulder is forward. Left leg, right shoulder. So as his knee is probably the more forward one, the ellipsis should go that way, right? And then as this leg is moving backwards, we should see it go back in perspective, right? That means this leg forward, this shoulder forward. Then it means this shoulder backwards. So it's a lot of, you got to start planning the pose a little bit more from the get-go. You know, if you decide on a running pose, don't try to just force it correctly, but think about the motion, think about depth, think about momentum, think about positioning of the limbs, positioning of the information, in order to be able to describe the pose correctly. Because now he's not running, he's lifting his arm to the left and kind of skipping to the side, if you would look at the motion. Hey, Kurokori dragon. Yeah, so with all these things mentioned, that's something you really got to keep in mind and force into three-dimensional space, so that light and form controls, enhances the pose, rather than the light and form kind of describes something that is out of the scenario, but you're trying to force it into a pose, and then that doesn't work, so it just becomes this awkward in between. And so with these changes, for example, I try to voice the decisions I've been making. You know, like his emotion. He's not a gentleman. He's a full motion character. So on. I mean, with this sort of straight spine, he stiffens up quite significantly. And this shoulder thing is obviously a mistake. Anyway, so that one character done. So we're looking at the oh, and by the way, let's go back to your original version. A big problem I have with this is like it's a purple shadow, dark green shadow, like dark purple shadow. All of that would make sense. Thank you very much, Chill Strand, for the follow, and Kubichok for the follow. Anyways, all these darker tones more or less would work if the opposite side of the range would be simpler. But the problem now is that it's just equally complicated. And one thing, for example, that Gurney said about palette is that you really need to choose which part is the is the primary, like who's controlling the dance, right? The light or the shadow. And if you're trying to equally fight each end, uh, like the light and the shadow, fight with them with color and contrast on equally on each end, you're gonna end up with just noisy, strange behavior. So let's take yours, right? And I'm hoping this is gonna work. So let's desaturate and let's just choose all the darks in the concept and desaturate them. And in theory, it's a little bit too heavy-handedly changed, but it should create a simpler and stronger read. But I think the problem with your highlights is that they're not complicated enough. So let's try it the other way around. Let's simplify your lighter end. No, it's not gonna work either. It's just gonna have the same result. The problem is just it's too many colors everywhere and there's no hierarchy. Hey machine, you missed it. I don't have a bot, so you can't do uptime. I should really get a bot. You just missed your paintover. Anyway, so by simplifying the gradients, you'll get a stronger read. And yes, you shouldn't use black in shadows. It's still not black in shadows. If you zoom in, you can easily, there's purples, there's oranges, but in your versions, it's just there's no meat, to the bone, right? It's just gonna be washed out in all the colors, and so on. But Mean Machine, I've saved it, the paintover, also saving the session, so don't you worry about it. Yeah. So going back to my paintover, and disregarding the color aspect and the pose, and in this instance, the pose, for me, I think is improved. We can sense the motion better. So I touched on the color. I think the colors are the biggest problem, and the pose and the placement of volumes, etc. So let's. I think design-wise, I think I should comment on design probably. He reads quite uniformly. No, is this darker? Is the jacket darker? Where do you want the viewer to go? Why is most of him green and then a blue helmet and then brown pants? Could you tie like the sections together? How can you improve the rhythm of how we read the character? It's just green and then brown and blue. It's a bit odd. No, Gila. My point being is just that, how to explain it? Let me maybe see if I can have some old painting. Take this one, for example. This is not a worked up painting by any means. This is just a sketch But as you can see, like the shadows versus the light, they have a hierarchy together. You know, the shadows are greener and like grayer, while the light is warmer and stronger. And it's very important to kind of define that hierarchy. And say for this one as well, right? I've chosen to put saturation towards the light. So the more lit parts have more vibrancy, and the darker parts are falling back to grays and blues and cyans. And then let's say if I would let's say I choose the darks and I boost the saturations of the dark parts. You see how there's no calm place in the painting, even though the shift of colors might look interesting, but the fact that they don't have a place to you don't have a place to land, the rhythm is offset, and by switching it off, and I can even exaggerate my initial decision of the palette. Like the lighter end spectrum should have more saturation. Like if I increase the light, right, it doesn't break, because the buildup is already based on that the lighter end is the more dominant one. It has more hue shifts, it has more complexity and more saturation. Uh, and on this way, I mean, if I do it like this, right, desaturate the lit end now and increase the saturation on that end, it makes more sense. But if I should probably exaggerate that even further. So now the shadows have the dominance, and now that palette reads stronger. So it's just a matter of choosing. You have to choose the complexity of the palette, where at what end. And for that, I strongly recommend James Gurney's Realistic Light book. So problem with Sayarts is that he goes on both ends of the spectrum and just goes crazy with saturation, and they become quite cartoony or comic like, because it's just full brightness. So looking at the design of the character, I think that the design of the character is pretty good. One problem is with this leg. It suggests a hip rotation, or a toe, a heel rotation, the ball of the foot. So what you probably should have done is lift the foot, because if you don't lift the foot, that rotation and the hip socket is going to be quite awkward. And because the hips are leveled with the horizon, makes it even weirder that without offsetting the balance, she's rotating the thigh inwards, right? So she lifts the heel and rotates the heel outwards. Try it yourself. Try to make the top of the thigh point towards the other thigh. And the only way to do that is rotating the heel. You can't do that without rotating the heel because they're connected, right? So if you want to have two different angles, you need to move the foot. You need to lift the heel. Otherwise, the pose becomes awkward. And she's also flat-footed. I think the hairstyle is cool. I think the mask is interesting. There's some positioning that's incorrect with the eye. I think because you've drawn the eye from the side, yet we're looking at her. We should see the eye inside the mask in perspective, and her looking at us like that, right? Because you can't rotate the whole eye sideways to look at us. And currently, it looks too much like the whole of the mask is like an eye looking towards us. That would be from the front, but we would most likely just see the cavity of the mask with an eye inside and the eye looking at us. If that makes sense, right? Because you're gonna have to choose which volumes you want to describe there. One problem I'm seeing with the design also is that there's a lot of similar shaped objects in a lot of spaces, and it's creating this rhythm that is not too exciting to look at. So what you gotta try to keep in mind is when you're adding, for example, symmetry like this, that she has armbands, then you really need to make sure that there's enough contrast to shapes so that the rhythm of the design isn't being divided up in equally sized elements, so that you have, it's like, let's say there's a range from black to white, right? And in a design, if you have a full range equally divided, it will never look interesting. Like, what if you only had this, right? That becomes a contrast, that becomes a point of view. And even more if you start making design decisions based on shape or mass, right? And that all of a sudden becomes an interesting rhythm just by that defining that gradient different. Number one talent, that's fine. I did a paint over of your submission though. Hey Captain Jetlag. So by that simple definition, take a look at the composition of shapes and placements and think, what are you doing to this value range, this alternative value range of the decisions you're making, that you're starting to create a recipe, right? So she has these shapes, and she has flat shapes, a lot of flat shapes across the character, right? So much like the gradient of this equally divided gradient, right? If we have lots of horizontal lines, which is then we're defining that is the gradient from 0 to 100, right? So this how many gradients do we place, right? So we're counting, right? So there's quite a few gradients lines, right? There's a higher density there. So let's say that is the way you choose to define the design of this character. You're breaking it by adding lines like this, right? So you're shaping the shapes differently, and you're having this line going down, this line going down, and so on and so on. But the problem is that if you're going to do the explanation of the gradient, right, from black to white, what you're doing now with only the horizontal lines, saying, okay, I'm doing black, but I'm just doing black, and I'm doing white. That is not interesting to look at, because it doesn't have contrast. Even though the contrast is black and white, the size difference or the distribution is it doesn't have dynamics. So when you're doing design decisions and applying them, you really need to think about, okay, what things can you add in the design, let's say, by this simple decision to make a seam, a seam down the pants, right? Like some sort of enhancing line, probably not that high up. Let's have it underneath the pocket. A line that just goes across the pants like that. Already you're defining in the design that these two sections, they are connected. Without that line, they are two separate objects. So already you're having a horizontal line, but it's curved, and it turns into a vertical line of action that helps to dictate the different ways we look at it. All right, Sayart, I'm going to continue shitting on your art. I'm going to upload it afterwards. Good one. Enjoy work. Anyway, so you should always try to think about these things as you're designing something. How does the elements flow through the character? What's the story points? Who is the character? Crazy, wild, calm. What attributes can you add? What style decisions can you make so that you can enhance the narrative of the shapes or the narratives of the character attributes, etc., etc. What can you add so that it doesn't become so compartmentalized sections of the similar sized shapes and forms, much like the checker. Yeah, so I'd say that is something you should really think about. It's something that I've noticed a lot in your art, especially when it comes to palette. It's very much uniformity. You really need to make sure that you go back in and be more careful with like hierarchy of the palette and so on. Also, the one big point which I will just remind you of is that, for example, he's all green and brown pants and blue head. She's all red except the mask. You really need to play around with local colors way more. I'll show you something. Just kind of came into mind. Let's see if I can find a good example. Ah, this is a decent, good enough example, right? From Assassin's Creed, like the shadows, the temperature of the shadows goes all towards one, versus the temperature. I mean, this is quite black and white. It's not the best example, but the local colors are different, right? So there's red, white, green, leather, skin, black, but they all kind of sit together. And your problem in your paintings is that rhythm between the different parts is not so strong. Like we can clearly see silver segments, we can clearly see red segments, we can clearly see brown segments, and they have a rhythm how they're distributed across the character. And the problem with a lot of your art is that it doesn't have that clear rhythm. It all sits in the same space. So, for example, making her shirt gray and her boots gray creates a completely different rhythm, right? And it's a fully high contrast decision to make it gray. I mean, you don't need to make it gray. You could just make it less red, or shift it slightly. You know, maybe towards green more, so it ties together with the mask. But either way, it does create a better rhythm. Yeah, Novio linked to one of my images. Here you can also see the clear separation of different parts, but it is what it is. It's an old one. Let's save this one. So I'm not going to change too much of the design decisions you made. We're talking about the horizontal, a lot of horizontal lines. You should probably change it up. So this is zeolites. Zeolin painted a lot of other ones, but I think this one is the one that was taken further. Hey, Zeolin. Woot woot. Good stuff. So Zeolin did lots of different explorations. I can show them. So sort of cyberbrain. It wasn't as full as the other one. Here was brainstorming, which I think is great. You know, obviously lots of thinking, story, etc., etc. You know, making it. And that's completely fine, Zalian. We are all different. I mean, I am completely swamped as well, and I don't have time to do a lot of things. Hence, why this stream is going to not be very long. So up there is some thumbnail explorations I think are cool. So this is the thumbnail. This is the next step. So I think this one is the best one, because on this one it reads really well. I mean, if we zoom out, the bottom left one reads still. All the other ones, they kind of fall into noise. And when we zoom in, there's enough information, you know, that keeps us occupied. I mean, that being said, I do understand, Zelin, also that you're not the the most experienced artist. So there's certain things I could say, and but most likely you need to think about um, other things beforehand. So let's say, for example, Sayart is at a point where let's switch off the feedback. Sayart is at a point where he understands volume and posture, even though the level of understanding could still be higher. This toilet lid of whatever. His understanding is the next step where you need to go, right? Obviously, he has issues. The big problem, what I see with your way of drawing, is you are stuck in that beginning phase of understanding volumetrics. You understand volumetrics of what is in front of the next thing. You understand the relationship between forms because you have overlaps, right? But if you disregard of what you have drawn and try to think of it as an object. So I'm gonna try to show you what I'm trying to say. So if you look at the torso from a 3D space, right? The torso is a cylinder that's pinched, right? We can both agree on that, and it has a center point, and in the neck comes a tube out of the center point, and if we take a radius, it's called radius, right? Or find a center line going through the cylinder, it's this line, right? And then we can define that there's a thing going down. Actually, it's going beyond the cylinder of the torso. We can understand that. You most likely will understand that when we break it down. But the way you're drawing is you're thinking about that interactions on a 2D plane, right? We're not seeing the perspective of the cylinder because you're drawing everything from the side. And even though you're drawing the feet, 1 foot to the side, 1 foot to the front, it's still object as a two-dimensional being, right? So let's redraw these feet, but in perspective. So the foot coming out at us with the heel on the ground. You can even actually let me take a step back. So we could even have a vanishing point, right? Oh, that's some extreme perspective. There's going to be some crazy extreme perspective. So my apologies. So 2-point perspective, right? Fundamentals. But you can draw the foot in perspective like that, right? So now we've drawn 2 feet planted on the ground, flat, right? Both pointing the same direction, but they're still not, you know, they're not that you've done over there. So we have a horizon line, and if you don't know, you can shift perspective points depending on rotation of an object. So now you've rotated the other foot, right? So in theory, your problem is not volumetrics, because you understand volumetrics, because you draw cylinders, you draw perspective in a way, but you're drawing it everything from a dead angle from the side. So in order for you to improve and take your stuff to the next step is to understand the 3D aspect of the volumes a lot more, where Sayart is. Sayart can understand the design in a 3D space and relate that form correctly in depth, right? Your design decisions actually, like character design, is strong enough at this guy. You know, you could have that in a game in theory. Hey, Jacob Mobley, thanks for the follow. At that level, you know, as a design is fine, but the execution of it shows lack of understanding of 3D space because the arm, they're posed outwards, flat. Like if I would just go the angle of my shoulders, the direction of them straight out, and they're not like having my hand forward or even rotating the shoulders versus the hips, you know, contrapposto, you know, where hips and shoulders are going each direction. Everything is squared off, and the perspective is like we can look at it from like we would be lying on the ground looking at the feet, and we just see the feet flat on the ground, and then we keep lying down and just goes up, 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 and there's no depth to the character, right? Even though the volumetrics is correct of cylinder chest, knee pads, they curve correctly and so on, but the whole character as a whole is lacking that. But I think as a design, this is cool. I like it a lot. So what you've got to practice is perspective and poses and drawing them more than just from the side. Like you obviously know perspective just looking at the exoskeleton structure there. You understand it. You just need to force yourself to draw the characters in a 3D space and not to just draw like the flat volumes squared off in perspective. Engage yourself in way more depth in the character, and then design the character within that depth. It's going to be tricky at the beginning because you have to start designing in perspective, because now you're not designing in perspective even though you're drawing perspective on the objects. You're not, the shoulders are equal in perspective. But if I rotate like this and you design my shoulder pads like that, you're going to start thinking, oh, where does that thing go? Where does this thing go? That way. You know, it becomes a completely different thing, right? So that's the first thing you got to do, and really practice it, and you'll see that the decisions you're making at this level is going to be a lot stronger, because you're going to be doing it in full 3D space, and you're going to be understanding the relationships completely differently. So it's really nice. You just need to stop this flat perspective thing. That's good stuff. That's it. No, one last here. this was Gila. Okay. So there's some design decisions being made, right? So she said, or he said, um, that they put the villain and the hero in one. That's fine. Um, and then you have to ask, like at what eye level am I watching the character? So we are at the eye level of the hands, right? Because we're looking up at the character a little bit. And there's a lot of decisions that you can be making. Um, and also the decisions you have made is also dictating certain things. 1 second. So I'll show you. Just different camera angles. And what they do. So here, obviously, we are looking up at him, and we're engaging as a tighter crop, which means we need to pay attention to vertical lines, because there's many vertical lines, and we are very close in, and he's on the third, and the horizontal lines all leads to his center and at the note, right? So this one is an X. In either line we all go to him sitting on the banister, and then due to contrast we're looking at the note. And if we go to the head first, like that, where his eyes are looking down, and we're going back to this, so they're all pointing to the note. And here he hasn't engaged yet in the note, because I think in the story he hasn't started talking yet. So what's important here is the horizon line and where he's at, and we get placement, and also there's a very busy leg with a lot of information, very busy back with lots of information, high contrast on the side, high contrast on the other side, and we land at the eyes and the outer silhouette, because it's very flat, right? So that's like that's the dictation of the rhythm, and we're hinting to that because that comes later to this. So taking a look at yours, you can start thinking about, okay, what is the decisions you've made for us to look at it, right? So if we break it down, that you want the villain hero to look at the bird, all your decisions on the body are very horizontal lines, right? So what if the character is leaning more forward, um, and maybe because he's leaning forward, he also has his arm higher up, and could also make a high contrast area and offset the symmetry a lot more, so that when he does sit like this, he actually, let's move the interaction. Maybe to his elbow. So he's sitting there going, oh, what's that? And looking at it. But then also, there's a lot of horizontal, vertical lines. Maybe it's worth offsetting it. But you've already created his legs quite tall, like it is some sort of we're looking up at him.
All right.
Oh, thanks for the follow, Dilemmas. So much like these ones, right? They all use contrast and lines in the background to help guide the eye. You have vertical lines, but they're all very subtle. You know, so maybe you could put one building further in, help dictate their narrative. Maybe they're really tall houses going into the clouds. Just kind of up the level of complexity in the painting, so that when we look at it, there is more than one layer to it. Same goes for his design. If we look at the original, I mean, obviously, I hunched him. That is a design decision, or a decision rather than design, because it's not really design. But it's a decision I made just to push the idea of personality. I mean, you could easily, I mean, he's sitting straight up and looking, probably because he's surprised, right? But then he's not showing any emotions on the rest of his body. And a usual good tool or rule is to show the action before or after, not mid. So if he's surprised, show him surprised, or if he's not surprised yet, make him oblivious of it, you know, so that he's yet to have the reaction. Hello, plumbers. Welcome. Yeah, so I decided to put the bird on his elbow. You don't necessarily need to do that if you don't want. You could easily be still on the shoulder or the knee. You could even maybe like lift his arm completely, where he just goes, what? So this is more like post-reaction, right? He has seen the bird. He is confused, or she is confused. He, most likely. You know, it just creates more complexity to the scene, and helps with the narrative. So looking at the examples I showed, for example, you could easily have more lines, maybe airplane flying, whatever you can come up with that helps push the eye more towards where we need to look, to help dictate the painting. Because a lot of decisions you've made here is very like isolated and arranged and cold. There's no interaction whatsoever between all the parts. It's just like copy paste work almost. So by adding more complexity to it, by shifting the perspective points, by helping dictate the composition, you're going to create a lot more alluring and complex interaction that will help the viewer to be more engaged in the painting. Much like Zeolin, it's very arranged. There's this knowledge of depth isn't there to the same level as other. So what you got to do is just experiment with it more, and when it comes to design of this character, the original, it's very compartmentalized, and the shape of the shin bone is the same length as the arm, as the same length as the chest, and it just and his head is the same as his pectoral muscles. So it all becomes very similar and repetitive, and it doesn't become challenging to look at. That being said, let's look at Deadpool, for example. There's different sized objects across him placed at different positions, and it's creating this offset rhythm of where we're looking at. You see, this additional shape isn't there. So that's because his face is very symmetrical, so they need to offset it to create a more interesting rhythm. You see, he has probably an additional segment on his leg. No, it's the same, but he has a knife there to offset the symmetry. And the size of everything is directly correlated to each other, and it doesn't create this static rhythm of what the next shape doesn't feed the next shape in the sense of the equality. It becomes asymmetrical. So a lot of issues with your design is that it just doesn't have that rhythm. It's just very balanced and flat in that sense. I didn't touch the design because it's secondary to the point of narrative. Jacob Mobley. That's cool. That's good. All right. Like I said, the stream won't be super long. I think I'm almost 2 hours now. I'm very tired. I really gotta go and do something else. So thanks everyone for doing the 2-week challenge. For anyone interested in joining in on the 2-week challenge, join the Discord. Just click the Discord link underneath. It's like a forum of sorts. And after this stream, I will post a new 2-week challenge if you're interested in joining in. So every 2 weeks, I do this session, do paintovers, and try to give you girls, pointers and mistakes you've done, or my thoughts, or possible solutions. That's cool, Captain Jetlag. Thanks, Satsuki. Thanks, everyone. So I'm gonna finish the stream now and try to come up with a new one. It will most likely be up in a couple of minutes. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining. Have a great day, good night, wherever you are in the world, and the stream will start tomorrow morning as per usual, 9:10 UK time, for more character design focused work. And Jacob Mobley, feel free to join. Just click the button. Anyways, see you tomorrow morning. Bye. Here comes the outro. I'm going to bed.